revealed. The incredible truth behind a waitress's bandaged hand. You won't believe what happened. The doors of Millie's diner swung open with a creak, and the familiar scent of fried bacon and brewed coffee welcomed Sarah as she stepped inside. Her bandaged hand, partially hidden beneath her apron, attracted curious glances and hushed whispers. What happened to Sarah? They wondered, eyes darting from the makeshift wrap to the worry etched on her face. The low hum of conversation faded into an anxious silence as she approached her assigned table, the chatter briefly pausing like a held breath. What was she supposed to say? That she sliced her hand while desperately trying to fix her father's old lawn mower? That each cut she made to her skin felt like the slicing through the last threads of normality in her life? When did it all start spiraling? She shook off the thought, clenching her jaw to stifle the unease creeping into her chest. Life kept asking more than she could give. The weight of looming medical bills for her father loomed heavy in her mind. She felt their suffocation every time the phone rang, a reminder of his deteriorating health and the expenses spiraling beyond her reach. Each day she served smiling customers, exchanging small talk while pain gnawed at her insides. Who would take care of him if she couldn't? This diner was her anchor, a place cemented by routine and familiarity, yet it felt like a noose tightening around her ambition. And then there were the canvases she had tucked away, forgotten in the chaos of motherhood. One evening, painting her father's workshop, a flicker of joy ignited within her. But how could she risk pursuing it? The brush strokes felt like a dance between self-doubt and a desperate yearning for something more. If she started down that path, what would happen to her family? Before we continue, came a voice from somewhere in the room, jolting her from her spiral. A fellow waitress was making an announcement about YouTube notifications. Sarah barely heard the words, her mind racing. Should she ask a friend for help with the painting? Or would that put her in competition with her? Should she bury this dream deeper to focus on reality's demands? What exactly was she attempting to prove? Even Mrs. Thompson, the charming retired art teacher who frequented the diner, had taken notice of her talent. The mere thought of her encouraging words ignited a fire in Sarah, spurring her forward in moments ripe with madness and excitement. But would it matter if the rent was overdue, the bills stacked high? As those questions clashed in her mind, uneasiness clouded the thrill of embarking on something of her own. The bandage on Sarah's hand, soaked in her uncertainty, felt like a weight pressing down. Just then, old wounds of betrayal emerged. A fellow waitress she had trusted began whispering half-truths around the diner, fueling insecurities entwined with the canvases she yearned to paint. The betrayal felt more profound than the physical pain of her hand. As the lunch rush buzzed around her, Sarah held the chipped ceramic coffee pot tighter, her fingers trembling as thoughts jumbled in a cacophony. Family first, always family. But deep down, she craved to be more than just a waitress, more than a caregiver, more than what was expected. So many years buried in labor, laughter, and endless sacrifices. But what would become of her father if she chose to chase dreams? The stakes felt insidious, her family's collective stability against her flash of ambition, welding her heart to the decision left unsaid. Tomorrow was gallery day, but then again so were the bills waiting. In that moment of reckoning, Sarah clenched her teeth, willing her heart to choose. Would she leap or stay? The din of the diner faded, leaving just her breath heavy and uncertain. She felt tension coil within her, drawing tighter with every thought as evening beckoned. Would life let her dream, or steal away her chance before she ever dared to grasp it? As she prepared for that pivotal opening, the bandage on her hand seemed like a metaphor for the struggle she couldn't run from. Behind the scar it whispered of battles still to come, and the echoes of her fears thickened the air, heavy with unspoken promises yearning to break free. The next morning dawned with a hazy light filtering through the kitchen window of Millie's diner, revealing dust motes swirling lazily in the air. The soft hum of machinery busily grinding away in the back, alongside the comforting sounds of sizzling bacon and sizzling pancakes, lulled Sarah into a rhythm that vaguely resembled tranquility. Yet, beneath this facade of calm, the questions layered in her mind fortified the disquiet of her heart. She had wrestled with her decisions throughout the night, staring at the ceiling of her cramped room while her father's labored breathing filled the silence beside her. Was she just a waitress, forever bound to this routine, or could she become something more? She apprehensively glanced down at her wrapped hand, a stark reminder of the night that had come so close to breaking her and yet had also ignited a flicker of resolve within. The gallery opening lingered at the edge of her thoughts, a tantalizing and terrifying prospect. What if nobody liked her paintings? The idea crashed against her like tidal waves of doubt. Yet, another voice whispered back, what if they did? Each brushstroke held a piece of her untold story, a manifestation of the dreams buried beneath familial obligations. As the morning rush began, she found herself pouring coffee and serving plates with the kind of trained efficiency that often masked her inner turmoil. But each smile she exchanged with the customers felt less hollow than before. They were a crowd of people who saw the mask she wore but, perhaps unknowingly, also reminded her of the life she craved. Lunchtime approached, and Mrs. Thompson came in, her eyes gleaming with that familiar encouragement. You have a talent, Sarah. Don't let it fade like the dust on those canvases. Her voice, firm and wise, sent shivers down Sarah's spine. Invisible strings pulled her toward the passion she had long disregarded, reigniting a determination that throbbed against the fear and fatigue suffocating her. After finishing her shift, Sarah grabbed her things, her bandaged hands still throbbing, a constant reminder of both injury and tenacity. She made her way home, her heart racing with every step as the gallery loomed ever closer in her mind. Yet, the deeper she pushed into the prospect of being an artist, the more paralyzing the fear of failure became. Settling down that evening at her dining table, she pulled out an old canvas, dusting it off gently as if handling something sacred. For a moment, it felt exhilarating. That swoosh of unrestrained creativity wanting to spill forth caused her heartbeat to quicken. Yet doubt followed like a shadow. What if she failed? What if that small flicker disappeared as quickly as it had arrived? Pushing back against the tide of intimidation, Sarah squinted into the dim light, desperately willing herself to take the plunge, to make two bold strokes that screamed back at her insecurities. Turning her hand toward the canvas, she hesitated, her fingers lingered, trembling at the brink of liberation. Just then, the phone rang, vibrating through her thoughts like an electric jolt. It was the local community center calling about the gallery. She felt her breath catch as she answered. The secretary's voice crackled through, bubbling over with excitement. We'd like to confirm your participation. There's quite some buzz about your work. The thrill of possibility soared, clashing jarringly against the weight of dread. On one hand, assurance and opportunity. On the other, a spiral into chaos as she considered all that could go wrong. The glances of judgment, the failures laid bare for all to see as the call ended. Sarah sat in stunned silence, the sharp pulse of her excitement entwined painfully with her anxiety. The moment of truth was near, the chance to unveil her truth stinging against the backdrop of familiar fears. Before her thoughts could spiral further, another question ignited a deeper inquiry into the fabric of her own identity. Was she ready to confront these fears publicly, to own the artistry that stirred within her while balancing the looming responsibilities? One thing was clear. The moment of reckoning had arrived, one filled with the weight of doubt and the promise of transformation. Determined yet trembling on the brink, Sarah resolved to face her unfolding story head-on. But the road ahead still bore uncertainties, threatening to turn triumph into turmoil as shadows crept in through her home. Wrapping her in a familiar sense of unrest, she clenched her bandaged hand, conscious of an impending decision that could alter the very course of her life. Would she step into the spotlight and claim her narrative, or retreat, allowing fear to triumph once again? The air in Sarah's room felt thick with the weight of her unanswered questions, as if tangible clouds hung above her, heavy with doubt and unrealized potential. After the call, she paced the floor, each step propelled by equal parts excitement and anxiety. The cacophony of her thoughts drowned out the rhythmic pulse of her heart, which beat a frantic tattoo against her chest. She stopped in front of a mirror, examining the reflection that stared back at her. There she was, a waitress, pale and freckled, with ink stains on her fingers, remnants of her secret life as an artist. But beneath the layers of exhaustion and uncertainty, a flicker of something deeper shimmered, a yearning for more. Could she transform that flicker into a blaze? Breathing deeply, she thought back to Mrs. Thompson's words, a buoyant echo calling out against the tide of her insecurities. They were a reminder of the talent she had almost allowed to wither. The comfort of Millie's diner now felt claustrophobic, each shift becoming a countdown to a critical moment she could feel creeping closer, a moment that demanded she reconcile her identity as both waitress and artist. With a jolt of resolve, Sarah flicked on the small desk lamp, illuminating the once disheveled studio corner of her room. It was time to embrace change, to confront the dormant artist she had allowed to fade. She dragged over the easel and whispered to the canvases that adorned the wall, "Tonight, we discover what we're truly capable of." Moving with purpose, she set up her palette and lined up her brushes. Each tool felt like an extension of herself, sparking a dormant energy she had nearly forgotten. Not just a waitress, but a creator, a woman with a story to tell. She hesitated only briefly before pouring vibrant colors onto her palette, the pigments blending into a riotous symphony. As she dipped her brush into the paint, she felt a rush. The first stroke carved through her doubt, the vivid hues serving as catharsis. Each layer of paint transformed the canvas into a reflection of her internal battles, the fears, the aspirations, and the fragile beauty she desired to share with the world. As she worked, memories bubbled to the surface. The moments of stolen artistry in the quiet hours of the night, the exhilaration of a brush flying across the canvas while everyone else slept. An image of her father, worn and weary but steadfast in his love, flashed in her mind. That very love spurred her forward, an anchor in the turbulent seas of uncertainty. She wanted to prove to him and to herself that there was more beyond these four walls, beyond the confines of the diner. Hours slipped by unnoticed as she painted with fervor, the walls of her room closing in and yet feeling infinitely spacious. The brush became her voice, a tool through which she could express everything that had remained locked inside her for years. Visions danced before her, obsessions manifested through art. Just as she began to lose herself in the meditative rhythm of creation, a sharp knock on her door shattered the fragile bubble of focus she had built. Startled, she glanced at the clock. It was late. Her heart raced. Who could it be at this hour? With hesitation written across her brow, Sarah wiped her paint-streaked hands on an old rag and opened the door. What greeted her was unexpected, a familiar figure silhouetted against the hall light, a mix of concern and urgency etched into features she thought she'd left behind. "Sarah, can we talk?" said the voice that sent a chill down her spine. Tom, her former art mentor, and the one who had always believed in her potential. Her pulse quickened. "What are you doing here?" The words slipped out before she could censor her tone, laced with surprise and a hint of dread as their eyes locked. She knew this encounter could either expel her fears or deepen them, driving her further into the chasm of uncertainty. Would he bring the validation she sought, or would he drag her back to reality, perhaps exposing her vulnerabilities? Standing on the threshold, she realized the decision she made in that moment could change everything. Would she abandon the night's momentum, or lean into the confrontation? The weight of expectation hung in the air, leaving her poised somewhere between hope and dread. The intensity of the moment surged, propelling her forward into an unfolding chapter of her life that awaited with both promise and peril. Tom stepped closer, his expression shadowed yet earnest. "It's important, Sarah. I didn't come here to talk about the past." His voice carried a weight, a gravity that threatened to pull her along with it. For a moment, she felt those walls of her room closing in again, the familiar suffocation of her hesitation taking hold. She took a deep breath, summoning the courage she had just begun to embrace. "Then what do you want?" she asked, her tone steadier than her insides felt. "I've seen your work," he replied, the urgency in his voice intensifying. "I've seen the new pieces, and they're good, really good. You have a gift that can't be ignored. You need to show it. You deserve to be fearless in your pursuit." As his words sank in, confusion swirled within her. Fearless? In her mind, the weight of all her uncertainties wrestled against the tiny flicker of belief she had just begun nurturing. Would she even be able to step onto a stage bright enough to expose her vulnerabilities, even if that stage held the promise she craved? They invited me to a gallery. They want young artists, fresh perspectives. You need to apply, he continued, his eyes boring into hers, urging her to see the opportunity behind those words. You can't let fear dictate your future. A gallery? The mere thought sent a rush of panic through her. What would it mean to put herself out there exposed and measured? Each brushstroke she had made tonight felt monumental but also delicate, a testament to personal battles she wasn't ready to unveil. I don't know, Tom. I work at the diner. What do I have to offer that could possibly stand out among real artists? Her voice cracked, mingling vulnerability with an abrupt defensiveness she couldn't shake off. You are an artist, Sarah. It's time you recognize it. There it was again, that old flicker of belief she had buried deep. You cannot define yourself by your job alone. Your paintings tell stories, let those stories breathe. Her thoughts raced, skirting around the possibilities. Could she stand before a crowd, scrutinized for her work? Each critique and judgment felt like a haunting specter, whispering doubts that threatened to drown out the small voice beckoning her forward. What if they don't like it? What if I fail? Tom's expression softened. Every artist doubts, but it's what you do with it that matters. You have to face those fears. You owe it to yourself to try. An idea sparked, an echo of her earlier determination surfacing amidst her swirling hesitations. If she truly wanted to embrace her identity as an artist, perhaps this was the moment she had been waiting for. But was she truly ready to take such a leap? What if I make a fool of myself? She asked quietly, almost daring him to reassure her. Then you'll make a fool of yourself. Embracing that is part of the path. Growth is always messy. What you need to understand is that great things never come from comfort zones. Just imagine what could happen. Putting her hands on her hips, Sarah drew a steadying breath as Thomas' words washed over her. What if she took that chance? What if this moment, steeped in courage, supplanted the fear that paralyzed her for far too long? Realization settled in, palpable and vivid. She needed to pull the fabric of her doubts apart, thread by thread, and weave it into the courage to stand and present herself unapologetically. But even as excitement flickered in her chest, another doubt whispered cruelly. Was she truly ready to dive into an unknown that might forge her career and identity forever? You have until tomorrow to submit your application, Tom said, snapping her back to the moment. His gaze sharpened, waiting for either acceptance or the sound of retreat. Sarah studied Thomas' determined eyes. She was struck suddenly by the sense that here lay the crux of her development. This was pivotal. Either she would step into her reality as an artist, pain and thrill intertwined, or she would retreat into the familiarity of her routines, a decision that weighed heavier than she expected. Well, what are you waiting for? She challenged, glancing at her art corner, an uncharted territory ready to become her battleground. In that heartbeat of resolve, she felt the rush of possibility mixed with uncertainty. The moment had arrived when she had to challenge the very essence of who she was, everything she had held within and the freedom she had long craved. Standing at the precipice of her own evolution, she realized the gallery would only be the beginning. Would she seize the chance, or would she once again pull back into obscurity? The silence between them crackled with anticipation, her next step waiting just beyond the door. The sunlight poured into Sarah's room, illuminating the chaos of her artistic sanctuary. Paintbrushes lay strewn about, splatters of color adorned the canvas, and unfinished pieces whispered of stories yet to be told. She could feel the urgency pressing down on her, each tick of the clock echoing like an impatient heartbeat. Tom's words weighed heavily upon her mind, oscillating between motivation and doubt. Could she really do it? The mere thought of stepping into a gallery, having her work critiqued, sent a shiver down her spine. Fear coiled around her like a snake, squeezing tighter with every passing moment. But intertwined with that fear was something new, a fragile and burgeoning confidence. For the first time, she felt the pulse of her aspirations. With each brushstroke she made that morning, Sarah toyed with the idea of application in her mind. What stories had she captured? What emotions had she poured into canvas? Was she prepared to reveal herself, her vulnerabilities, to others hungry for the rawness that held power? She scanned her latest piece, an abstract representation of isolation, colors frayed and chaotic, frighteningly close to portraying her innermost feelings. The clock ticked on, and as the deadline loomed closer, a current of determination surged within her. She picked up her phone and quickly drafted her application. Sarah, a waitress with a dream, she typed, her heart racing. Each word connected her to a greater purpose beyond her day-to-day existence. This was an invitation to break away from the constraints of her identity. But still, doubts clawed at her. You're wasting your time, Sarah. They're looking for real talent, not some diner girl. The insidious voice of self-doubt echoed, and she slammed her phone down. With a frustrated exhale, she looked back at her canvas. What if this is who I am? Her reflection in the paint-stained mirror seemed to ask herself. Who defined real talent? Hours spent honing a craft and the rawness of lived experience mattered too. Those late nights spent sketching in the diner, painting with shaking hands, didn't those count? Drawing in a breath, she navigated away from her fears. What's the worst that can happen? She mused aloud. A rejection? It's not like I haven't experienced those before. Each failed job application, the endless hours spent in the diner, a life lived on the fringes of her dreams. But now, she had a chance to forge a different path. She sat back down, her fingers trembling as they hovered above the keyboard. In that moment, she made a choice. She would embrace her risk, her fear. The gallery would taste her vulnerability, the essence of her story, and she would stand tall, finger poised to click send on the submission. But as realization dawned, another question unfolded in her mind. Was she ready to face not just the potential critique but also her own insecurities? This was not simply about artistic validation. It was about shaping her narrative, breaking the chains that confined her identity. With newfound clarity, Sarah began to formulate what her piece could express. She envisioned standing before an audience, telling the story of the girl who carried the weight of her past, who lived in the shadows yet longed for the light. Each brushstroke, each shade intertwined with her voice, a voice that had remained hidden for far too long. Her heart raced as she bounced between self-assurance and trepidation. In this moment of turbulence, a flicker of anticipation ignited. Could she pull that life into existence? Finally, with resolve, she clicked on her application. The words unfurled to reveal a piece of her soul, unmasked and ready for appreciation or critique. The satisfaction pressed against her chest like a fading balloon. But the moment of triumph was short-lived, as a new reality pressed down upon her. With her application sent, her heart raced for a different reason. The world ahead was unpredictable, but the exhilarating taste of embracing herself and her art left a zest that lingered with each breath. Voices of people she hadn't met echoed in her head, their judgments waiting just beyond the horizon. What if they didn't see her? What if they didn't understand? The thought lingered, unsettling yet electrifying. Would she cower from the experience or hold her ground as a testament to her journey? Determination pulsed through her veins. And as she stood, staring into the vibrant chaos of her art, she felt it a magnetic pull forward. The next step awaited, a confrontation with her fears that would lead her toward an uncharted territory. The success of her application wasn't the end, it was only the beginning of grappling with what lay ahead. The artist she was meant to become and the truths she would ultimately uncover. With a weight lifted, yet shadows still looming, she resolved to press on and face whatever awaited her. Would she have the courage to confront those deep-seated insecurities? Or would she retreat into the shadows once more, paralyzed by the weight of expectation and fear? The days that followed the submission were filled with an unsettling anticipation. Each morning, Sarah awoke with the sun filtering through her blinds, yet the warmth it promised felt distant. The chaos of her studio continued to surround her, but the once comforting clutter felt now like a reminder of the uncertainty that loomed. She paced through her day, her thoughts spiraling like the strokes of a brush on canvas. At the diner, customers filtered in and out, oblivious to the intensity of her inner struggle. She poured coffee with shaky hands, each refill offering only a brief respite from her spiraling thoughts. The clatter of dishes and hum of conversations faded to a dull roar around her as she replayed her submission in her mind. What if her work was too raw, too personal? What if she had exposed too much? The nagging voice returned. Who are you to present your feelings as art? Day by day, Sarah battled the creeping suspicion that she might disappear entirely into the shadows of her self-doubt. To break the cycle, she turned to her canvas. It was there she found a refuge, a sanctuary where she could channel her anxiety into something tangible. As she painted, the vibrant colors bled into each other, mirroring the tumult within her. She poured her breath into every stroke, trying to harness the energy of her fears, transforming it into something that would resonate with an unseen audience. Yet, through the chaos emerged something unexpected: clarity. The more she painted, the more she confronted her vulnerabilities. She stepped away from simply recreating experiences of sorrow and isolation, choosing instead to explore the deeper well of emotions that lay beneath. The brush became her ally, allowing her to articulate not just fear but resilience, aspiration mingled with doubt, and the deeply personal journey of transformation she was undergoing. Each piece began to tell a story, interwoven with her journey from waitress to aspiring artist, capturing the struggles in her life while depicting the vibrant dreams that sparked to life in between. As she painted, she questioned the narratives she had internalized. What did it mean for a waitress to hold the title of artist? It was not just a role. It was an assertion of her right to belong in whatever space she carved out for herself. Then came a moment of reckoning, a realization that gripped her with stubborn insistence. She was an artist not because of the opinions of others, but because she was actively creating. Fueled by this empowerment, she turned her focus to identity. The canvas became a reflection, a mirror exposing both the light and shadows of her being. The more she embraced her truth, the less she feared judgment. But clarity brought with it new challenges. The gallery's impending response loomed larger than before. She felt like a climber on a precipice, with the vast unknown unfolding beneath her feet. No longer simply concerned about being seen or accepted, rather she found herself pondering whether her art could genuinely resonate with others. Would they connect to her story? Doubt, once oppressive, now mingled with a flicker of hope. She secured her resolve, filling her days with the pursuit of artistic growth. Workshops, critiques, and fellow artists' shows became part of her new routine. Each encounter offered insights and nudged her boundaries, encouraging her to challenge preconceived notions of artistry. Yet with every small victory, anxiety gnawed at her. The harsh reality was that acceptance by the gallery carried weight beyond the validation of her art. It signified a commitment to her journey, a promise to herself that she would embrace every facet of her identity, the imperfections as much as the triumphs. Then, an email notification dashed through her thoughts, interrupting her focus. Heart pounding, she opened her inbox. The chill of reality flooded through her as she prepared to face whatever awaited her. This could be her moment: acceptance, rejection, or something in between. As she hovered over the message, her hand trembled. What would she find? Would this be a turning point or merely another barrier to confront? Driven by that same determination she felt when clicking send on her initial application, Sarah inhaled deeply. No matter the outcome, she was ready to face the truth of her journey and emerge an artist stepping boldly into the light. She clicked open the email, the world falling away as she braced for the unveiling of what awaited her on the other side. Her eyes scanned the screen, heart racing. But the words were jumbled, a blur of black on white that felt as if it were mocking her growing anxiety. The space between hope and despair tightens painfully in her chest as she read and reread, searching for clarity amidst the chaos of her thoughts. Then it registered. Thank you for your submission. We invite you to an interview. A rush of conflicting emotions swirled within her. Relief danced with dread. How could she prepare for this? What would they expect from her? With the news echoing in her head, she almost dropped her phone. The familiar din of the diner faded away, her surroundings blurring into insignificance. The shifting tides of doubt returned, crashing over her once again. What if I'm not ready? What if they see right through me? There was no room for the timid artist now. The stakes had risen. She felt the weight of the impending confrontation pressing down, reminding her that she still had everything to prove. As days slipped by in a blur, Sarah grew more restless. She found herself experimenting with her art like never before, tapping into an urgency that felt both thrilling and terrifying. Her canvases became populated with images of the elements of doubt she was grappling with. Shadows of herself painted alongside bursts of color representing her unyielding hope. Yet amidst the vibrancy, she felt an unshakable tightness in her throat. She immersed herself in research, perusing articles about presenting artwork and handling professional conversations. Every new piece of information fueled her desire yet stoked the flames of her anxiety. Alone in her studio, she practiced articulating her thoughts out loud, a form of preparation that felt absurd, yet necessary. The walls bore witness to her frustrations as she wrestled with fumbling phrases and erratic thoughts. The day of the interview arrived too swiftly, the sun casting a bright glow through her studio windows, illuminating the paint splatters like badges of her determination. Standing in front of the mirror, she focused on her reflection, searching for the artist she'd unearthed in the chaos. "You can do this," she whispered, the words feeling like a fragile promise. But her voice trembled a little too much, echoing the uncertainty creeping back in. When she arrived at the gallery, the austere white walls seemed to mock her. Clad in a simple dress, she felt vulnerable amidst the curated sophistication of the space. As she mingled with other artists, she couldn't shake the feeling that she was an imposter. "Look at their confidence," the inner critic taunted. Yet she pushed back against that voice, taking deliberate steps toward her goal. The moment came. A panel of 3 artists turned their thoughtful gazes toward her, skepticism woven into their expressions. "Tell us about your work," one of them prompted. Suddenly, Sarah felt the weight of her thoughts coalesce into a singular reality. She could no longer rely on carefully rehearsed lines. She had to confront her truth head-on. "It's about vulnerability," she began, her voice quaking but resolute. "About exploring fear and connection through colors and lines." As the words spilled out, she realized that she wasn't just presenting her art. She was laying bare the very essence of who she was. Every hesitation became a brushstroke, every falter a shade of raw honesty. But as she spoke, an unforeseen question hung in the air, an inquiry that cut deeper than expected. "What do you hope others will feel when they view your art?" In that moment, Sarah stumbled, each word demanding a deeper truth than she had prepared for. She had envisioned sharing her story, but could she actually bear to lay it fully bare? Would her journey resonate, or would her fears overshadow the beauty of her art? A mixture of vulnerability and strength imbued her next words. "I hope they feel less alone," she stammered, her heart racing, "that they can also find their own voices." A moment of silence settled as the panel absorbed her honest response, weighing it alongside her artwork. But as she concluded, the echo of her own self-doubt reverberated. Would her authenticity suffice in this stark landscape of professionalism? With a resolve she hadn't felt before, Sarah prepared for whatever they would say next. The question now loomed larger than life. Had she truly laid her soul bare, or had she just taken a passing step onto the path of acceptance and potentially rejection? As the interview progressed, she realized that the journey of being seen was far from over. It had merely begun. Her heart raced in tandem with the ticking clock, each second stretching into an eternity, as Sarah awaited the panel's reaction. The silence hung heavy, almost palpable, as if every breath she took drew focus to her inadequacies. They leaned in slightly, their expressions unreadable, a combination of scrutiny and intrigue. "Thank you, Sarah," one of them finally said, breaking the tension that had tightened her chest. "Your perspective is refreshing. We appreciate your honesty." Yet, despite the kindness in their words, self-doubt curled around her thoughts like a vine, suffocating the little joy she could find. The questions mounted in her mind. Had they seen through her facade? Did they truly value her work, or were they merely being polite? As the interview continued, they asked about her experiences, her influences, her journey as an artist. Each question pulled at the threads of her identity. In response, she wove a narrative filled with artful intricacies and raw honesty. She recounted moments spent in her studio, the times where doubt clouded her vision, and how she emerged taking each brush stroke as a step toward embracing her true self. However, even as she spoke with fervor, shadows of anxiety flickered behind her words. This unfamiliar confidence mingled with a haunting fear that it was only temporary, that as soon as she left the gallery, she'd shrink back into that suppressed version of herself. With every answer, she experimented with vulnerability, revealing pieces of herself she had long kept hidden, like colors breaking free from confinement within her palette. Yet, a sudden thought pricked at her. Was this level of openness sustainable? The fear of being perceived as overly sentimental loomed large, but beneath it lay something more profound, an awakening realization that her art, like her voice, deserved to be fully expressed. "Tell us about the duality in your art," another panelist prompted. "You spoke of connection and isolation. How do those elements coexist in your work?" Sarah inhaled deeply, the question igniting something turbulent within her. "It's a contradiction we all navigate," she began, emboldened by the continuous flow of words. "Isolation can be a conduit for connection. I use shadows and light to illustrate that. The darker areas represent our fears, while the light symbolizes what we aspire to achieve. Together, they create something holistic." With this insight, she felt the flicker of strength deepen, the sheer act of sharing a piece of her personal philosophy serving as a catalyst for potential acceptance. But there was yet more to uncover. As the conversation continued, the panel probed further, navigating not just her art, but the person behind it. "Why do you think it's important for artists, particularly ones who are emerging, to showcase their vulnerabilities?" Her throat tightened. Instinctively, her hand went to the small bandage peeking from under her sleeve, a relic of a recent fall that had left her with both a physical and emotional scar. "Because our scars tell stories," she replied, the tremor in her voice becoming steadier. "They help others feel less alone in their own struggles." With those words, an almost palpable electric charge filled the air. She had offered a bond deeper than art itself, a shared human experience. She could see their eyes shifting, a spark of recognition illuminating the panelists' faces. Did they understand? Did they feel her truth? As the interview wrapped up, Sarah walked out of the gallery, her heart heavy but her spirit shimmering. She felt raw and exposed, but also empowered. Her art wasn't merely a reflection of herself. It was an extension of her soul, a testament to her resilience. Yet doubts still whispered, soft yet persistent, nudging at her freshly ignited determination. What if this isn't enough? They taunted, brushing through the vibrant hues she had painted in their minds. What awaits her beyond this moment of vulnerability? Would the world embrace her unfiltered voice, or would it turn away, leaving her in the cold shadows once again? As she stepped onto the street, the sun continued to rise and fall in a cycle. She yearned to be part of a reminder that the journey was ongoing, that she was merely at a crossroad of possibilities. What would she paint next from the swirling chaos of her heart? The question lingered as she held onto the potential unfolding before her, contemplating how to navigate this new, uncharted territory with her artistic voice. And amidst the uncertainty, another thought awakened. What if this journey of self-revelation was only the beginning of something transformative? The weight of her thoughts clouded Sarah's mind as she stepped onto the bustling street, the rhythm of city life pulsating all around her. Each honk of a car and rush of feet against pavement felt at odds with the internal storm brewing within. She had bared her soul to the panel, yet doubts encroached like uninvited shadows. The adrenaline from the interview still coursed through her veins, heightening her awareness of the world. Yet those nagging voices began to drown out the thrill of self-expression. Could she lean into that vulnerability beyond the gallery? What did it mean to truly express herself within her art and life? As these questions swirled, she found herself staring at her reflection in a shop window. The woman staring back seemed both familiar and foreign. Her eyes glistened with a fierce light, a fire ignited by the interview, yet embedded within was a doubt so deeply rooted it felt like a chain around her spirit. Determined to explore this newfound fervor, Sarah made her way to her studio, the place that had often been her sanctuary and her prison. The moment she stepped inside, she was enveloped by the intoxicating smell of paint and turpentine. Each splattered canvas waiting for her touch reminded her that her art was not just a product. It was an exploration of her identity, a testimony woven through each brushstroke. With trembling hands, she approached an empty canvas. The stark white surface beckoned to her, a blank space waiting to be filled with raw truths. She picked up the palette, mixing hues of vibrant blend that represented the myriad emotions swirling inside her. How could she convey the dichotomy of hope and anxiety? As she worked, her mind drifted back to vulnerability. Why did the thought of opening herself further scare her? Wasn't she already laid bare? With every brushstroke, she confronted the weight of expectation, not just from the world, but from herself. What if I fail? She questioned internally, yet the echoes of her previous fears transformed. Instead, they morphed into a challenge. What if she soared? Inspired, Sarah poured herself into the painting, layering colors, adding shadows that danced with the light. The physical act of creating became a metaphor for her journey. Every error and correction made felt like her own growth. This canvas revealed not just her artistic capability, but an exploration of scars both visible and hidden. It mirrored her struggles with identity, the contradictions mingling inside her. Hours slipped away, each minute bringing her closer to the essence of what she was meant to share. She paused, taking a step back to observe her work. It was chaotic yet harmonious, a reflection of her reality. The darker shades coiled around bursts of vibrancy, creating a paradox of feelings. Suddenly, she realized that her art could serve not just as a reflection but as a bridge to understanding the complexities within herself and others. As night crept in, the vibrant colors on the canvas showed a story and narrative interwoven with her experiences and emotions. Sarah felt a spark of something new igniting within her. Courage, but the quietude of the studio was soon pierced by the nagging question that surfaced as a pulse beneath her anticipation. How would others react? Would they see her growth or simply judge the work as an extension of her vulnerabilities laid bare? An unexpected knock interrupted her contemplation, sending a ripple through her thoughts. Hesitation gripped her as she approached the door, and deep within her, another question echoed. Was she ready to share this piece of herself, and would she be ready for the world beyond? With a deep breath, she opened the door, facing an unforeseen moment that could redefine her path yet again. What awaited her beyond this threshold? The moment sat heavy in the air as Sarah stood before her door, heart racing. When she opened it, Tom's familiar face looked back, a mix of concern and encouragement plastered across his features. Hey, I wanted to see how you're holding up after the interview. Stepping aside, she allowed him in. The studio lingered with the scent of fresh paint and the remnants of her artistic fervor. I'm managing, she stammered, her insecurity bubbling to the surface. Could she share the chaos of her thoughts, the swirling combination of hope and doubt? Tom noticed the pieces hanging on her walls. Your work, it's evolved, he said, taking in the vibrant strokes and deep colors. You've captured a rawness that resonates. I see you've been busy. The heat of pride crept into her cheeks. I'm trying to be honest, she replied, pulling her bandaged hand protectively toward her body. Scary to reveal so much. Scary, yes, but also transformative, he encouraged, his eyes softening. Every time you put yourself out there, you're redefining who you are. This is growth in action. An urging breath deepened within her. But what if they don't connect with it? What if I fail? Tom stepped closer. Failure is merely a stepping stone, Sarah. It's about the process, not just the outcome. Every artist faces rejection, but the true victory lies in creating despite the possibility of it. His faith in her reignited the spark she had been nurturing since submitting her application. It was an odd contrast to the shadows that still whispered uncertainty, and as she moved towards her canvas, she felt a swell of determination. Do you want to see what I've been working on? She asked, greeting the canvas that had become a portal for her emotions. As he stepped forward, Tom studied the painting intently. Stunning, he said, admiration brimming in his tone. This piece has life, depth. You're telling your story, one that resonates universally. Her throat tightened at his words, and she felt the weight of her past slip a little. It's chaotic, though. I'm afraid it's too messy, she admitted, her self-critique echoing loudly. It's art, Sarah. Art embraces chaos. It's about capturing the journey. Embrace the mess, it's where clarity is born. The rush of acceptance warmed her. The once distant dream of being recognized for her art now felt tangible. She turned away from the canvas, contemplating Tom's words. Each moment she spent buried in her work not only forged her identity, but pushed her deeper into her aspirations. I think I'm ready to unveil myself, my work, my story, she declared, surprising even herself. It was electrifyingly liberating to acknowledge the truth of who she had become as an artist, as a person. Tom beamed at her. That's the spirit. Remember, stepping into the light means standing firm in your truth, both the light and the darkness. The Gallery 1T just showcase your talent. It will be a reflection of your resilience. With those words echoing in her mind, Sarah stepped back from her painting, feeling as if a weight had lifted. She wasn't just a waitress or a caregiver anymore. She was an artist with a heartbeat, an identity woven through each brushstroke, each color whispering tales of fear, hope, and triumph. Let us prepare for the gallery. Then, she smiled, the fire rekindled within her. How do I communicate this story properly? Together they spent hours articulating her vision. Tom guided her as she practiced how she would engage with those who viewed her work. Tell them what each piece means to you, the fears, the exhilaration, the awakening, he instructed. The following days were filled with excitement. The approach of the exhibition day loomed large, yet she felt invigorated by the anticipation rather than paralyzed by it. She had persevered through doubt, harnessed her story, and transformed it into art that held her essence. As she prepared for the showcase, she embraced the growing recognition of her identity as an artist, her confidence firm. The weight of her past no longer confined her but rather shaped the foundation of her endeavors. On the day of the gallery, the space buzzed with chatter and laughter. The air thrummed with creative energy, and as Sarah set her artwork on display, she felt every brushstroke shimmer with authenticity. As visitors began to stream in, she noticed a diverse audience captivated by her work. Their reactions cemented her growth. Smiles broke through the uncertainty that had once loomed. Conversations swirled around her paintings, and eyes ignited with understanding and appreciation. In that moment, Sarah's growth crystallized. She had conquered her fears and transformed them into art, establishing not just her competence as an artist but asserting her right to share her story unashamedly. The gallery spotlight shone not just on her creations, but on her, an acknowledgement of a journey that was just beginning. Pride surged within her as she embraced the connections forged between her truth and the viewer's reactions, each interaction threading her experiences into a larger narrative. Finally observed as more than a waitress, Sarah stood empowered by her own transformations. The shadows of doubt could not undermine her newfound identity. She glanced around and locked eyes with Tom, who smiled proudly from the corner. In that shared moment of understanding, she acknowledged the liberation that came with embracing her journey. With this acknowledgement came the fortitude to pursue her art, her dreams, unapologetically. This was her moment, one of several remarkable steps toward fulfillment in both her personal and professional self-discovery. The winding road she had traveled shimmered with both scars and dreams. But that day, she knew she was exactly where she needed to be. As validation poured in, each comment echoed a part of her heart. She was more than enough. With that unshakable belief igniting within her, the paths ahead stretched into infinite possibilities. She had chosen not just to reveal her art but to reclaim her identity, proving to herself and others that she was worth standing in the light, unfiltered, unapologetic, and fiercely alive. Embrace your stories, push toward your dreams, and never shy away from your truth. Sarah's journey is a testament. Your moment could be just one decision away. If you resonate with Sarah's transformative story, the time to act is now. Subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories that inspire transformation. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm and help others discover their own paths of growth. Comment below with your reactions and theories about Sarah's journey. Let us dive deep into this transformation together. And remember, Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. Don't wait even one more second to share. Help someone else take their leap of faith.